What if your next stimulus check wasn't coming from Washington, but from Venezuela? What if billions in oil money could end up in your bank account or slip through your fingers forever? Right now, Americans everywhere are feeling squeezed. Prices are up at the grocery store, rent's climbing, and every bill feels like it's on autopay draining your family's account. It's personal, it's real, and deep down, you're wondering if something, anything, could give you some breathing room. What if there were a way government revenue could become direct cash for you and your family? That's exactly why this Venezuela stimulus check topic has exploded online. Even though no official payments have been announced, people are mixing two huge stories: a surprising new Venezuela oil deal and rumors about stimulus checks for Americans in 2026. You've probably seen posts, memes, wild predictions. $2,000 checks are coming. But let's cut through the noise and get you the truth in plain language. Today, we're talking about what's real, what's possible, and what's total speculation. We'll explain how Venezuelan oil revenue, US politics, and your wallet might all be connected, and whether any of this really leads to money in your bank or just more confusion. So if you want truth, clarity, and a roadmap to understanding what could happen next, stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll be able to separate hype from reality and decide if this stimulus talk is something that could actually impact your family's financial future. Confusion, rumors, and economic pain. Here's the honest truth. There is no confirmed new Venezuelan-linked stimulus check program approved for Americans right now. That's the reality. Not rumors, not hope, fact. But confusion is spreading online because people are trying to link two big developments: a controversial new oil revenue deal involving Venezuela and the US, and ongoing talk from US politicians about possible stimulus-style payments in 2026. That's the messy mix people are calling a Venezuela stimulus check. But let's break it down. When folks hear stimulus check, they think straight cash, money in your bank account. What they're really referring to are price relief measures, tax rebates, refunds, dividends funded by tariffs, and revenue gains. None of these are guaranteed direct checks. Not yet. The White House and Treasury have talked about using new revenue streams, including potential oil revenue or tariff proceeds, to fund tax cuts and dividends. But these discussions are still in very early speculative stages. Meanwhile, Venezuelan oil revenue is being discussed because the US now controls or manages Venezuelan oil sales after recent geopolitical events, placing that revenue in accounts controlled or overseen under legal guidance. This has spiraled into a lot of misinformation, which leads to people asking, does this mean I'm finally getting another check? Here's the blunt reality. No government agency has announced a Venezuela-linked stimulus check program for US citizens. But the topic has traction because you're hurting financially, and people are desperate for any good news. That's exactly why this video matters. We'll get into how the rumor took off, what parts are grounded in real policy discussions, and most importantly, what might actually happen next. Why everyone's talking about your money. Let's talk about impact, real financial impact that affects your household, your bills, your family's future. First, Americans are feeling pressure like never before. Inflation still high for many goods, rents stubbornly expensive, and wage growth lagging behind the rising cost of living. Families are looking for relief wherever they can find it. Now, tie that with massive news about US political moves in Venezuela, where the US government is selling Venezuelan oil that previously wasn't on the market and putting revenue into controlled financial accounts with the intention of stabilizing the Venezuelan economy and supporting workers. Suddenly, social media explodes with headlines like, Venezuela oil could pay US checks, and people start thinking, if my government controls this oil revenue, maybe that means cash for me. That's powerful psychological impact. A lot of people are banking, literally, on the idea that foreign resource revenue could translate back into American stimulus money. Politically, here's what's happening. Some US leaders are floating the idea of tax rebates or dividend-style cash infusions to American residents funded by tariff collections or other new revenue streams. But that's very different from a direct program tied to Venezuela oil funds. So impact number one, this fuels hope, especially in communities watching every dollar and wondering when the next lifeline will come. Impact number two, it creates confusion and misinformation because the human brain fills in gaps with what it wants to be true. Impact number three, it shapes political narratives and media coverage, which often drives markets, policy debates, and consumer expectations. And that's the real impact. Your expectations, your family's planning, and even the way you talk about money with loved ones is being influenced by a mix of fact and fiction. That's why this video is crucial. So, what's actually happening? Let's slow it down and cut through the noise. Here's the actual situation. The US has engaged in activities involving Venezuelan oil revenues, selling oil and placing proceeds into accounts to be used for stabilization and economic purposes. Some of that revenue, hundreds of millions, has already been received by Venezuela and is being used domestically. The US government, including the president and treasury officials, has talked about funneling some new revenue into economic relief or tax measures domestically, but no official program has been adopted yet. Here's the biggest distinction that's missing from most headlines. There is a difference between talking about financial relief in 2026 and announcing a legally binding stimulus check program. As of now, no signed law exists that would send every American a Venezuela-linked check. None. But that doesn't mean discussions aren't happening, especially as policymakers debate how to use revenue from tariffs, oil sales, and economic growth measures. There's been talk in the White House and financial circles about dividends or rebates funded by unexpected revenue gains, which some people have interpreted as potential stimulus checks. So here's your grounded truth. Policy discussions continue. Rumors are spreading. But no directive, no program, no IRS notice about a Venezuela stimulus check exists yet. Understanding this distinction is vital, because confidence without clarity could cost you time, hope, or financial planning mistakes. Could this really turn into money? Now, here's where we get to the suspense. You've seen clickbait titles, social posts, TikTok clips, and explosive headlines like, checks are coming. But let's break down how something like a real stimulus check could actually qualify for you. Step 1. A new revenue stream has to be legally recognized. Something like revenue gains from oil sales or tariffs. Government officials have indeed mentioned using new revenue for rebates or relief. Step 2. Congress has to approve legislation. Executive talk and proposals are not enough. No president can unilaterally send out checks without congressional authorization. Step 3. A specific program has to be outlined. Who qualifies? How much? When? That requires an official bill. Step 4. The funding source has to be secured, meaning revenue streams must be legally allocated to the program. That's where discussions about how oil revenue or tariff income could be used come into play. Only after these steps happen does something resembling a stimulus check become real. But here's the heart-pounding part. Some policymakers are talking about making it happen, and more importantly, they're talking about exploring ways to fund it using newfound revenue. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but it does mean this conversation has moved past fringe internet speculation and into real economic and political discussion. This is your wait for it moment, because if a program does get proposed, that's when the real storytelling, real impact, and real decisions start. Who would qualify if this ever becomes real? Now let's answer the question sitting in your mind right now. If this ever turns into real money, would you qualify? Based on how previous stimulus programs worked in the US, eligibility usually follows familiar patterns. Income thresholds, tax filing status, Social Security enrollment, and residency requirements often determine who receives payments. If a future relief program were tied to new revenue streams like tariffs or oil profits, lawmakers would almost certainly prioritize working families, retirees, and middle-income households. That means people like you, paying rent, managing groceries, covering insurance, trying to stretch every dollar, would likely be part of the conversation. But here's where people get tripped up. A Venezuela connection does not mean Venezuelan citizens receive U.S. checks or Americans receive foreign aid money directly. Any future payment would still come from U.S. legislation, processed through U.S. agencies like the Treasury or IRS. Another key factor would be timing. Stimulus programs usually require months of debate, negotiation, and approval before money moves. Even after approval, payments roll out in waves, not overnight. Mini summary. Eligibility would likely resemble past stimulus rules. Payments would still be governed by U.S. law. Nothing is automatic or guaranteed. Preparation matters more than speculation. This is why staying informed matters. When programs move quickly, those who understand the system early are better prepared to act, whether that means updating tax records, confirming banking information, or avoiding misinformation traps. The people who benefit most are the ones who don't wait for rumors. They wait for facts. And speaking of facts, let's talk about the biggest danger hiding inside this story: the risk, scams, false hope, and financial traps. Whenever stimulus rumors explode online, scammers move fast, and this story is already creating fertile ground for fraud. You may see fake websites claiming you can register for the Venezuela stimulus, social media posts asking for your banking info messages pretending to be government notifications, YouTube comments promising secret sign-up links. Let's be crystal clear, there is no official sign-up for any Venezuela stimulus program. If someone asks you for personal information, that's a red flag. Scammers feed on urgency and hope. They know families are under pressure, they know you're looking for relief, and they exploit that emotional vulnerability. Another risk is psychological. When people expect money that never arrives, they delay budgeting, postpone decisions, or overspend in anticipation. That can quietly hurt your financial stability. Mini summary. No legitimate registration exists. Government never asks for private info via DMs. Rumors can distort financial decisions. Protecting your data protects your wallet. Hope should never replace planning. Your power comes from awareness, knowing where to get real updates, trusting official announcements, and keeping your finances grounded in reality. Now, let's shift gears, because this story is not just about money. It's about global power, energy, and what happens next. The bigger picture. Why Venezuela suddenly matters again. So why is Venezuela suddenly part of American financial conversations again? Because energy is power. Venezuela holds some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. For years, sanctions, political instability, and international restrictions limited how that oil could be sold. But now, global energy pressures and shifting policies are reopening conversations about how Venezuelan oil enters world markets. That creates massive financial ripple effects. Oil revenue increases, energy market shifts, geopolitical leverage changes, policy negotiations accelerate. When governments control or influence large energy flows, revenue can impact domestic budgets, foreign policy, and economic planning. That's why analysts are watching these developments closely. But here's the key point for you. Energy revenue does not automatically translate into consumer cash. It influences budgets, infrastructure spending, debt reduction, and sometimes tax policy. But direct payments require separate legal action. However, when politicians look for funding sources to support relief programs, large revenue streams suddenly become very attractive. That's why the story keeps surfacing in political commentary and financial circles. Mini summary. Venezuela matters because energy equals money. Oil revenue influences global economics. Direct payments require separate approval. This story connects geopolitics to your wallet. This isn't random. It's part of a bigger economic chessboard. And you're one of the pieces affected by the outcome. Now let's talk timeline, because timing is everything when it comes to money. When could anything actually happen? If a stimulus-style program ever emerges from these discussions, it won't happen overnight. Here's a realistic timeline framework. Phase 1, political discussion. Leaders debate possibilities publicly and behind closed doors. Media speculation increases. Phase 2, draft proposals. Policy language begins forming. Economic models are tested. Phase 3, congressional negotiation committees review funding, eligibility, and impact. Phase 4, legislation approval, votes occur. Amendments are finalized. Phase 5, agency implementation. IRS or Treasury systems prepare distribution systems. This process can take months, sometimes a year or more. That means if anything happens, it would likely be well into a future legislative cycle. Not tomorrow, not next week. Mini summary. Policy takes time. Real checks require legal structure. Rumors move faster than reality. Patience protects expectations. Fast headlines don't equal fast money. Your best move right now is not waiting. It's staying informed, prepared, and financially grounded. And that leads us to something even more important. What you should do right now. You don't need to panic. You don't need to chase rumors. You don't need to click suspicious links. Here's what smart viewers do. Keep your tax records accurate. Monitor official government announcements. Avoid sharing personal information. Budget based on real income. Follow trusted news sources. If stimulus discussions become real, you'll hear it clearly from official channels, not from viral comments or fake websites. Mini summary. Preparation beats speculation. Protect your data. Stay informed, not anxious. Your wallet deserves clarity. Financial peace comes from information, not noise. Now, let's bring this story home. Hope without hype. This story taps into something deeply human, the desire for stability, safety, and relief. When you're working hard and still feeling stretched thin, hope matters. But hope must be grounded in truth. Right now, no confirmed Venezuela stimulus check exists. What does exist is ongoing political conversation about revenue, economic relief, and future policy direction. That means this story isn't over. It's just beginning. Your future isn't built on rumors. It's built on readiness. Stay informed, stay protected, stay empowered. Because when real opportunities emerge, the people who understand the system first are the ones who benefit the most. If you care about your money, your family, and your future, this channel is where you stay ahead. We track real updates, real policy shifts, and real financial opportunities. Without hype, without fear, without misinformation. Subscribe right now so you never miss critical updates that could impact your wallet. Like this video to help more families stay informed. Comment below. Do you think stimulus payments should return in 2026? Your financial future deserves attention, not guesswork. Stay smart, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next update.